After a week at the Senior Bowl, some perfect Colts fits have been revealed. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, which helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Just post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. What is up, everybody? Jake Arthur and Shaad McGinnis here. You know, the two of us from horseshoehuddle.com. And today we are pouring out our notebooks. We were down there all week at Senior Bowl practices. And so it's time to go over some of our most impactful offensive players, defensive players, and then some guys that we think fit really, really well with the Colts. Because if you guys have listened in the past week, I've mentioned that Chris Ballard, since being Colts GM, has drafted 27 Senior Bowl players. And that doesn't count UDFAs or guys they've signed or picked up off waivers a year or so after the fact. Like, they've drafted that many guys. So this is a very, very significant event for them. Shaad, you know, he had his eyes peeled as well. Chris Ballard has been down here. Ed Dodds, Shane Steichen's been down here. Cato June and Chris Watt are coaching on the American team. So the Colts presence down here is pretty heavy. So I'm going to go ahead and book it that we're going to get at least another few Senior Bowl players drafted here this year, Shaad. So let's start on the offensive side of the ball. We can start in depth chart order if you want, if you got any quarterbacks. But who has been your real offensive standouts this week?
If we're talking about quarterbacks, I think you got to kind of preface it by saying, you know, that these quarterbacks have never played with these guys before. So this week is typically a little rough on them. They're not as sharp and as polished as we're accustomed to seeing them. And we definitely saw some struggles. A couple of people I think that played well. I think Michael Penix did just enough to show people, you know, okay, I'm clearly the best and highest rated quarterback here. He was really inconsistent, though, with some of his ball placement. But as the week went on, he started to play better. I liked him a lot in the 11-on-11 drills. He had a couple touchdowns. He's one of the only quarterbacks to actually throw a couple touchdowns in the 11-on-11s, which is probably not saying much because, you know, the struggles that we saw. And I got to show a little love to Carter Bradley. I think he played himself maybe into a late round pick or a priority undrafted free agent. He's a guy that I think teams will take a look at because he showed command in the huddle, man. He showed the ability to make plays on time, in rhythm. He looked really good on day two. I think he had the best day two out of all the quarterbacks, and that was something that's unexpected for me, but he looked really polished out there.
Yeah, same here. I came away just like without many big notes on the well-known guys. Like Penix, I thought did the best in the red zone yesterday, and which we know is difficult for quarterbacks. Spencer Rattler, without being under constant duress in an actual college game, I thought was able to show his arm talent. Sam Hartman could be a fine CFL quarterback. We don't know. But no, he reminds me a lot of Gardner Minshew coming out. But I had more notes about the small school guys. Michael Pratt, I thought, looked well. He was able to hook up with his own Tulane wide receiver a couple times. But Carter Bradley, again, was one of the quarterbacks I came away most noticing in day two, like you mentioned. I just thought, you know, with these small school guys, it's easy for them to shrink and just be just a guy go into the rest of the crowd. But he was ripping it. He made some really ballsy throws that worked out really well. He ripped one up the seam in traffic that was a completion, would have been a chunk play. I was really impressed with it. I saw Gus after practice. I was like, your son's ripping it out there, man. I'm impressed. But no, Bradley, again, I think the Colts are, we could talk more about it in the fits, but he's a logical UDFA guy for the Colts just because his dad's here.
Makes too much sense.
Yeah, and the Colts will always have an extra camp arm in there, and maybe they liked what they saw. He had some athleticism. I thought Michael Pratt showed some athleticism as well. I think he, oddly enough, was perhaps the most, when it came to the zebra metrics, was perhaps the most explosive quarterback out there. Which was none of them were like world beaters or anything like that. But yeah, well, let's not waste all our time on quarterbacks because this isn't last offseason. We don't have to do that anymore. Who else stood out to you? Because wide receivers kind of stole the show this week.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to breeze by the running backs really quickly and get them some love, but Rasheen Ali from Marshall, unfortunate, he suffered, I believe, a torn bicep injury on day 2, but he was the biggest surprise at the position for me. Day 1, he made several wild plays. He has really quick feet, and his ability to catch the ball coming out of the backfield and get separation on linebackers during his routes was really impressive. I liked him. Marshawn Lloyd is another guy. I feel like he was the clear best running back at the Senior Bowl this week. The way this guy runs in between the tackles, his vision, he runs with low pads. Now, he does have a fumbling problem, and he did cough up one. I believe it was day 2. I think he coughed up one on the sideline to Max Melton, I believe, forced that fumble. So Marshawn has to tighten that up. That is a big knock on him coming out of USC. But I think he still separated himself from the rest of the guys that was here. There was a couple of other good guys that I didn't really put any notes for, but I thought had okay week, like Donovan Edwards. Dylan Lave, I think, surprised a lot of people, the small school guy out of New Hampshire. What did you think about the running backs?
Yeah, so I've kind of eyed some of them for replacements if Zach Moss isn't back, and you want someone else in the mix with Evan Hall. But Ray Davis had big question marks about catching the ball. And not only did he catch the ball well, but he made like really difficult, like highlight reel grabs all week. So I thought he was really impressive. Ali, like you mentioned, I said that on last night's show. I thought he had a great week. So it sucks to see him end his pre-draft process like that. Because I think they said he's going to be out like 4 to 6 months or something like that.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
A team will take a chance on him probably now as a UDFA because he's going to have to miss quite a bit of this spring and summer. But I thought he did pretty well. Dylan Loeb, like you said, as a small school guy, he did everything right. Like I had no knocks on him throughout the week. But looking at these receivers now, there were some guys that really, really stood out. And a couple of them did so well. They were like, we're bouncing. We're not coming to day 3. That's Roman Wilson and Ricky Pearsall. We've talked a lot about Pearsall this week just because, he obviously has familiarity with Anthony Richardson. That was Anthony's leading receiver at Florida. I talked to Pearsall this week about him. He said it'd be special to team back up with Anthony. But he was very sudden and he showed downfield ability, really good route running. That's what he's known for is the route running, the crisp, short area quickness. He showed that. Roman Wilson was a big play guy. He had like a 70-yard touchdown on a catch and run from Sam Hartman on the first day, made a really nice one-handed catch on day 2. So, Lad McConkey too. He looked very similar to those other two. And I saw someone compare him to Doug Baldwin yesterday, and it was just kind of like I see that. So it wasn't necessarily like the huge big body guys. It's these quick technicians that I came away really impressed with.
Yeah, and it's kind of unfortunate too in the same breath. We'll talk about the coach fits guys later, that some of these guys that had their best days is pretty much slot guys, Roman Wilson, like you talked about earlier, he was flat out unguardable this week. His route run is so smooth, he's fluid. The way he transitions in and out of his breaks, he gets separation almost at ease. And when he doesn't have separation, he makes the spectacular catches like you talked about, earlier. I believe he was the only person that beat Quinion Mitchell in a 1v1 this week. Quinion has been having so much success. He didn't even show up, and I'm sure we'll talk about him later. Yeah. But Roman Wilson was the only guy. And I was just shocked because he didn't get to show any of this at Michigan. The way Michigan offense is, it's a heavy run offense. And whenever he's catching some vertical, we rarely get to see him just work and show off how just dynamic he is with his route running. And that's what I think he put on display, similar to Ladd and Ricky as well. You almost can just say the same thing about all three of these guys because of the way they performed and how consistent they was throughout the week. It was no need for them to show up for day 3. I mean, they had absolutely nothing to prove to me.
Yeah, and I've learned the hard way, like you can fall in love with certain wide receivers before the draft, but the ability to catch and get separation is undefeated in translating to the NFL. And shout out to a small school guy as well, Ryan Flournoy. I was really impressed with his deep speed in particular in the one-on-ones. The defensive backs gave him a lot of cushion because they knew he was a blazer, and he destroyed it. He immediately erased the cushion and got past them downfield. Now, I don't think he connected on any of those deep shots because the passes weren't really on target, but he did his job. I was impressed with him.
Yeah, I like Flournoy. I also like Jaquan Jackson from Tulane. He's a small receiver. He's really small, almost in the Tank Dell mode, similar to what Tank Dell was last year. But he's explosive, man. He's explosive. He gets separation really quickly. He has the ability to run past guys. And thankfully, he had his college quarterback, Michael Pratt, here that was making sure he got targets and make sure he got the ball. He showed reliable hands. I was really impressed with the way he separated from guys early on. And from a guy that I didn't know much about, I mean, I went back and watched him. I saw he was a major contributor on special teams. So he does have return ability. He's able to help the team in multiple different ways. I think that's somebody, you take a day 3 flyer on.
Yeah, and then not a huge need for the Colts right now, but the big well-known offensive tackles, as the kids say, I thought these guys stood on business. They kept their draft stock, if not elevated it a little bit. You look at Talise Fuaga, Tyler Guyton, Patrick Paul, Jackson Powers Johnson was another guy who was like, I'm out. I dominated the Senior Bowl. I'm not coming back. But those guys are all considered high picks, and I thought all of them looked good.
Yeah, I mean, all those guys was winning reps one after one. I thought the defensive line was pretty good, but outside of those 4 guys, those 4 guys pretty much held their own whenever they did do their 1v1 reps and in 11-on-11s. You can see them opening up holes in the run game as well. That was a big part of 11-on-11s. And I think they performed well. I don't think there's any shocker or any stock movement with any of those guys because they came in and just handled business.
Exactly. So that's pretty much it for the offense. We'll get to more guys when we talk about who we think really fit specifically with the Colts. But next, we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the defensive standouts. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Because I know I am, and it's probably a fault of mine, and I am flying too close to the sun. Do you ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. Let's look at the 2024 Nissan Rogue, for example. It's perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is also your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right in to the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. Also, the 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Nissan's incredible lineup also includes the 2024 Nissan Armada. It'll change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Just picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in the first-class luxury and style. Tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. All right, so defensive side of the ball, Shaad. This is one where I got really excited because we know the Colts like these guys. The Colts need more help on the defensive line, especially on the interior. I'll just start. One guy I was really impressed with was Missouri defensive lineman Darius Robinson, and I don't want to get too much into him because he's a glove fit, I think. But he's a guy that has that length, has that explosiveness, and he won his one-on-ones.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say that, man. A lot of these guys defensively, a lot of my favorite guys, I think, fit what the Colts want to do on defense. So it's kind of a conflict of interest. But Darius Robinson, I know we're going to get into him again later, but man, he's a powerful, powerful guy. And watching him in 1v1s, I think he'll be the perfect replacement. Kind of, I don't want to say replacement like I'm trying to run the guy out of the door, but I think he'll be a great backup one technique in this Gus Bradley defense.
And that's what I think they need, really.
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone knows where to put him yet. He's kind of like a Dio Dangbo type of guy where he's got the size in athleticism to really play just about anywhere. But another guy who kind of stood on business was Tavondre Sweat, Texas. Just showed absolute power. He did mention at one point he didn't really want to do much bull rushing this week because everyone already knows he can do that. So he tried to show off his agility a little bit.
Yeah, and several reps he showed his ability to gap shoot, which is something I hadn't seen from him on tape. But the aggression and the power that he plays with, man, he is physically imposing out there. He has very violent hands. He's so strong at the point of attack. He's a prototypical defensive tackle right now in the NFL. It's easy to see why he'll be a first rounder. In my opinion, I think he'll be a first rounder by the time the draft process comes.
Yeah, especially when you see the guys recently, the success of Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis.
Mm-hmm.
He's an enormous guy with athleticism and power. And I think because there are immediate examples of it working out, I think teams will really like that. Braden Fisk from Florida State. Now, his measurables probably aren't like super great for the Colts. I it'll be fine. He's a type of guy they could take a chance on, but he really showed out. I had documented really good reps from him in 11 on 11s the first 2 days. I think he got a sack both days. He also had one where he was chasing down the quarterback, I think backed up in his own end zone. And if it wasn't going to be a sack, he would have got the pass breakup. He was running at him with his hands up. And again, with the quarterback backed up in his own end zone, that's going to end up as a safety or intentional grounding or something. So he continued to make big plays all week. He also, at the end of practice on Thursday, the teams were just kind of messing around. The coaches were throwing fade routes to the linemen out in the end zone and things. And Fisk, I was watching Fisk. He showed so much athleticism when they were just messing around. He's a big 300-pound guy. So I was really pleasantly surprised to see how multi-talented this guy is.
Yeah, well, Fisk, for his size, he's a really good athlete. The way he moves, and he gets off the ball and penetrates really quickly. I think it's his best trait right now. I know he's still raw, but he does have a couple pass rush moves. But I think his ability to get off the ball almost immediately, and gives you some juice from a pass rushing place that, let's be honest here, you don't have a lot of high sack defensive tackles in the NFL. It's a priority these days. And while I don't think he'll be one, but I do think he give you some pass rush juice from that interior spot, which is something that you don't get from most guys. He has a couple of pass rush moves that I do like. He has like this quick swim move that he beats you almost immediately with, and he used it repeatedly, and guys seem like they struggle to stop it. But all in all, I think he's a really good player, man. I was impressed with him, a guy that I didn't know much about coming into this week, and all I saw him do was win reps.
Yeah, and then so let's look back. The guys behind them. There were some standout performances from linebackers, I would say. Cal linebacker Jackson Sermon had a couple of interceptions. That's not a guy when you look at him that you think, ball hawk pass defense, but he showed out really well. One of them was off a tip pass, but another one it was off of Joe Milton, who of course has a really strong arm, and it was just a bang bang thing. Milton threw it right up the right hash, and he was right there to snag it right out of there. A really, really hard, difficult play to make. I can't think of his name right now, but UNC's linebacker number 33, I noticed him all over the field, making big plays, especially pass breakups. And then Peyton Wilson, I was looking at the Zebra technology stuff that shows, their physical performance, their speed, their explosion, everything. That guy was all over the field.
Yeah, Peyton Wilson, I believe he got up to 19 and a half miles an hour out there while he's playing. That guy can move, man, and he has great size. You have to like the size at the linebacker position. I think it's something that you absolutely must have these days. The way defenses want to play, we know linebackers is not being touted as premium positions, but I think they're still important in what you want to do defensively. We're seeing it now. Different quarterbacks are picking on linebackers because people are not investing heavily into them. It's typically one of the weak spots of these defenses that they're trying out these days. I think a guy like Peyton Wilson, who showed he can move side to side, but also has some instinct that he was able to make plays. I don't think he's a guy that you have to take off the field on passing downs. I think that's actually a plus in his game, his pass coverage. So I'm excited to see about him. I think he has a red flag with some of his medicals. I don't know. I have to look into that and see exactly what it was. But I know he had a couple of torn ACLs when he was in college. So that might be a red flag with him.
Yeah, I believe I've heard people say his medicals are going to be huge at the combine. And we got to talk about DBs because there were several standouts as well. Quinion Mitchell from Toledo was the best defensive back on the field, I think. Notre Dame's Cam Hart, I thought, there were some plays he gave up in one-on-ones, but he was always competitive. Made a lot of plays on the ball during 11-on-11s. You've got your safeties here. I thought the Georgia tandem of Javon Bullard and Tyke Smith stood out really well. Both those guys attacking the ball. I feel like you saw Javon Bullard celebrating a lot based on plays he just made. Great range, again, attacking the ball, not being passive, making sure he's proactive with the things that were ahead of him. And obviously Miami's Cameron Kinshin. So that's important because the Colts need DBs this spring.
That's why I'm almost hesitant to talk about any of these guys.
I know. We're definitely going to save them for the next segment, but I had to mention a couple guys here.
Yeah. Brownlee, that's one of the guys I think had a good week. Brownlee was literally running routes for guys, and I seen him get some love from Sauce Gardner on Twitter about that. He was excited to see that. But he was a guy, since I think he'll be better in a press man type of defense. I was fine with mentioning him. But like you say, man, when you talk about guys like Quinion Mitchell, Cam Hart especially, those are guys that I think will make wonderful additions to this Colts defense. So I guess we could get into it.
Right. I'd say guys we're about to talk about here in a minute. So coming up, we're going to go, offense, defense, whatever. We're just going to talk to you guys about after this whole week of practice, we watch these guys and we can see them in a Colts uniform and really excelling in the systems that the Colts employ. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level? Well, LinkedIn Jobs knows that the success for you all depends on the team that you surround yourself with. And that's why they've created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board either, even though they have a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which obviously makes it the best place to hire. And hiring's easy when you have that many qualified candidates to choose from. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats nowadays that you don't always have the time and resources to do even some of the most basic things like hiring. So they make it really intuitive and easy to use. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And now for an advertiser that I could advertise in my sleep because I use them constantly. I've been using them all week. It's DoorDash. Did the game go to timeout? Time to order in with DoorDash. Is it halftime? That's ordering time. 2-minute warning. You got it. That's your cue to order in. Whenever the clock stops, that's time to order in with DoorDash. So I got in here to Mobile Sunday night. I wasn't going to go anywhere. So I went to DoorDash. And of course, I mention this every time I talk to you about DoorDash. If I'm traveling, I will order from somewhere I can't get back in Indy. So I found the Lost Pizza Company out here in Mobile. I got myself some wings, and then they have a pizza called the Otis, which is essentially a meat lover pizza with chicken on it, which is key because I like chicken on pizza, but you don't get that a lot. A lot of people don't invest and they're chicken when it comes to the meat lover pizza, but it was dynamite. I got some queso with it as well that I have saved all week and I've been using for just about everything I've eaten here at the house. And then last night, Walk On Sports Bistro. I got a few appetizers. Wasn't super hungry, but wow. I got a couple sliders, again, some wings because I have a problem. And then they have this violent food option called the Devil's on Horseback. It was jumbo shrimp with cream cheese and jalapenos wrapped in bacon and deep fried. Like, that was really unkind to my cardiovascular system, but it was incredible. Like, as soon as I saw it on the menu, I knew I had to have it, and it did not disappoint whatsoever. So for those of you who need to go use DoorDash, get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. Again, don't forget to use code LOCKED23 for 50% off up to a $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more. Subject to change, terms apply. All right, so Shaad, that was a lot of talking for me right there. I'll let you go ahead. I'll let you go ahead and take it. Let's just, your favorite guys that you watched. And again, it could be guys we've already talked about, but ones you just absolutely think would fit really well with the Colts.
No defensive back has made himself more money this week than Quinion Mitchell. The most dominant performance of any cornerback, easily to say. His ability to mirror receivers. I mean, literally, he spent his week in the hip pocket of whichever receiver was closest to him. Like, He literally dominated. He has great feet. He plays physical with his hands. Competes at the highest level. Like I said, he only lost one rep the entire week that I saw. I may have missed a couple, but I only saw Roman Wilson beat him, and he was just phenomenal, man. Like, the Colts, I thought 15 would be reachy for a guy like Quinion Mitchell. I'd much rather the Colts trade back. If they were really that interested in a guy like that, I'd much rather trade back into the 20s. Pick up a couple extra picks and then take a guy like Quinion Mitchell. But I think after the week he's had, nobody would bat an eyelash if he did go 15, 16, 17.
And I think that's fair because, the cornerback group at the top of the draft is pretty rich. I mean, when you look from starting around 10 to into the end of the first round.
Yeah, that's when the run starts.
Yeah, you've got the Alabama guys. You have, Clemson. And so he fits right in there. So you could trade back and still get him. And we could all see the Colts trading back, sitting at somewhere like 15, where maybe you're not going to get a blue chip guy, but with the exception being like, Brock Bowers or someone else I'm going to talk about in a minute, Latu. If one of those guys is available, you could do it, but otherwise trade back into the 20s and get a Quinion Mitchell. That'd be outstanding. And then your outside corners are Juju Brents and Quinion Mitchell, which that's pretty nice, setting yourself up for Gus Bradley for the next couple of years.
Yeah, you don't want to have to. Jalen Jones, who's fine, who had a good rookie year, you don't want to rely on a 7-round pick to be playing starter snaps for you in this rookie season. He was taking LA for a reason. He needs time before he's able to contribute in such a major way and be a plus starter in the NFL. Yeah, did he do fine for a 7-round pick? Absolutely.
Yeah.
He made plays at times, but he also played like a 7-round pick at times, and that's something that has to be acknowledged. And we can't just bank on just natural development and him being better next season, because that's always a crapshoot when you just bank on that without making significant investments into a position. And I don't think Chris Ballard can afford it. He needs to invest heavily at that position, whether it be via free agency or via the draft. And a guy like Quinion Mitchell, trading back and getting him would be a big boost to that room. I mean, I know people want a veteran added to that room because it's full of young guys right now, but the talent speaks for itself. He instantly, clearly be competing for the best cornerback in that room the day he's drafted.
Yeah, totally agree. Again, Jalen Jones far exceeded expectations, but you're also looking at Dallas Flowers coming off of an Achilles injury. And you just can't afford to bank on everybody getting healthy and staying healthy. You don't have guys there that aren't so good that you shouldn't keep looking for upgrades. Another guy, so this one, he wasn't like a huge standout, but I just really see this here. Miami's James Williams came in as a safety. He's been a linebacker all week here. He's been coached by Cato June all week, assistant linebackers coach with the Colts. When I talked to Cato earlier this week, he came out and mentioned him because, of course, Cato went through a similar thing, was a safety at Michigan. When he went into the NFL, he became a linebacker, weak side linebacker. And I could see this for James Williams. And the Colts need – I think this is perfect because the Colts need a coverage linebacker that isn't necessarily going to be so important that you have to play him eating into too many snaps against Zaire and EJ Speed. So I think that's a really, really good fit there.
Yeah, and I hadn't even noticed him until I watched your interview with Cato June. So I went into day 3 specifically watching him, and he's really raw. Naturally, He's going to be really raw. He's never played the position before. He considered himself a box safety, I'm pretty sure, for most of his life. But watching him move, he does move really quickly. I think his instincts are pretty good. But you can see him just still trying to figure it out, which is more than acceptable. But when Cato June talks about him unprompted, that kind of speaks to what the Colts are thinking and how they feel about this guy, because there must be some interest there. Like Cato June said, he probably sees some of himself in James. And I think he has the potential with some development that he's worth taking a flyer on. And by his safety background, he'll be able to play in coverage almost immediately from the linebacker position, from what they'll be asking him to do. So I think that's a good way. He won't probably impact the run game anytime soon, but once he gets a better feel and more experience and more snaps at the position, you can see him evolve in that area too. And you never know what this guy can actually develop into, because I believe he's 6'4", right? He's 6'3",
he's a tall guy. He's a tall guy.
Yeah, he has great size for the position, so I can see him developing into something pretty solid at the next level.
Mm-hmm. And I know we're running out of time here, but I still got a few guys I really like, man. One guy
specifically.
So one of my guys I feel most strongly about, UConn interior offensive lineman Christian Haynes. That's a guy with position versatility. Again, I talked to Colts assistant offensive line coach Chris Watt, who was coaching this guy this week. He said they moved him around to all 3 interior spots, and he responded really, really well. That's the guy who made Jefferson from LSU rip his helmet off. So he's getting under guys' skin, and he's performing really well. He's got the anchor. He's got really good lateral movement, I think, that he showed this week. So the Colts, obviously, their offensive line is intact right now. Danny Pinter and Jack Anderson are the only free agents. But I think the only way that you keep this offensive line staying at a high level is you have to keep feeding the depth. And you got a guy here who can play all 3 interior spots, I think is definitely worth a pick in the middle of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the Colts, they went young with the kind of the swing tackle position with Blake Freeland. Although that probably wasn't the plan, but with Pinter going down, you want to get young at offensive line, because when you have these injuries, you have starters who may consider retirement, or may get angry when you ask them about considering retirement.
Yeah.
But you never know, you just don't know. Football is such a violent game. It eats away at you season by season. So you don't know how close you are to retirement until you're actually retiring. But injuries, you want to be young with your interior and your swing tackle position. So if the day you can draft somebody that has that experience, but can also have that versatility to add at several different positions on the offensive line, that's always a great thing to have. And I think Haynes showed that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Who's another one of your guys that you just feel the Colts got to get in there?
Okay, this guy was designed in a lab to play defense for the Indianapolis Colts. Cam Hart from Notre Dame. Cam Hart, 6'2", 204, has over 32-inch arms. He's the perfect type of corner for Gus Bradley's scheme. I don't think he's a great man corner, not going to mirror and match. He's not going to be in your hip of your receiver. But when you're talking about just going vertically and using your length to your advantage, I think he's the perfect guy to play in that type of system. Plus, I saw him in 11 and 11s, and he had several good reps. He broke up a touchdown. I believe that was day 3. Day 2 and day 3 is running together in my brain for some reason. But I think it was day 3. He stopped 11 versus 11 rep. And he had a couple good one-on-one reps. He's a guy that for his size moves really well. His testing is going to be important at the combine. What exactly, how fast is he? How slow is he? I think if he finds a way to run in the high 4.4s or low 4.5s, I think he'll be perfectly fine at the next level. But anything slower than that will really hurt him. As long as he has the ability to come up and tackle, which I don't know yet because I haven't really dug into his tape yet. I was just watching him at the Senior Bowl, and it's not much tackling going on from the cornerback position, so it's kind of hard to evaluate. But I'm going to go dive in and get a look at it sometime this week. But Cam Hart looks like a guy that was built to play in this Gus Bradley defense, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Colts took an interest in him throughout the draft process.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the biggest things for me is when I was trying to determine who I think are like these really good fits for the Colts, I liked what I saw from him. And then I went to the Zebra metric stuff that I mentioned and who were the most explosive players. There's a metric they have of guys who hit a really high speed, but then also decelerated quickly as well, showing their change of direction and all that. And so that paired with like their measurements, I'm just going to fly through some of the guys who maybe not going to wax poetically on here, but I definitely want to mention them. So the running backs, Marshawn Lloyd, Ray Davis, and Dylan Loeb. I thought if the Colts lose Zach Moss and want to bring in someone to compete with Evan Hull, Trey Sermon, Tyler Goodson, those guys really fit. This guy had a rocky week, but UNC wide receiver Tez Walker, who's arguably the most explosive receiver out there when it came to those actual metrics. There was day 2 was really shaky with his hands, but I thought he rebounded nicely day 3. Southeast Missouri, Ryan Flournoy was a big one. Obviously, Pearsall we talked about. Let's see. Florida interior lineman Kingsley Egwakun, another big one. Notre Dame edge Marist Lofu, and Kansas's Austin Booker. If you're looking for a tiny school guy, Houston Christian's Jalix Hunt. He pretty much checks all those boxes for the Colts. Darius Robinson, obviously, we mentioned. Let's see. Cam Hart was on my list as well. And then safeties, because regardless of whether or not Julian Blackmon is back, I think they're going to have to add someone. Miami's Cameron Kinchins, Utah's Sione Vaki, and then the Georgia pair of Javon Bullard and Tyke Smith. So I'll leave the floor to you if you want to fly through some of the guys that you still wanted to mention.
Adisa Isaac, I didn't get a chance to talk about him. He's pretty much a pass rush specialist from Penn State. I know the other Penn State edge, Chop Robinson, got most of the attention when you watch that school. But Adisa Isaac, man, he showed great burst in 11 on 11s. I think he's 6'4", 250 pounds, has great length. But I think he's going to be a problem in the run game. I don't think he's going to be able to play on first and second downs unless he learns to play a little bit lower and kind of get underneath those tackles so he can use the leverage to kind of move those guys and shed those guys to be able to be an impact player in the run game. I don't think he has that yet, and I'm not sure when it's coming. But if a guy that you're looking for in just specifically passing situations that can get after the quarterback, show great burst, uses his length to kind of stab off tackles, has a little bend, more bend than I initially thought he had, and he got after it on a couple of plays, man. I was really impressed with Adisa Isaac. Latu, I mean, he's the best guy there. He was, in my opinion, he's the best defensive lineman there. But Cameron Kitchens, I saw your interview with him. He was my safety one coming into this week. I was extremely high on him. But just watching your interview with him emphasizing things like communication, something that's so important on the back end, route distribution. I told you that's most important thing that a safety can have is the ability to understand the way routes are distributed in the offense, because he has the rangy stuff. We see the physical profile. We see the ball hawking from post to post, sideline to sideline. He does that well. We watched him in 1v1s. So he has the ability to come up. And if you notice, I believe Kitchens was the only safety that was coming up and doing his 1v1s against wide receivers. He went against running backs and tight ends. I believe day 1 and maybe part of day 2, but day 3 he spent specifically covering Ladd McConkey and other wide receivers. I thought that was important to show that if you need a guy that can play slot cornerback as well in the defense. So he proved he's a ball hawking safety from post to post. He has the slot versatility. And now the only question is him being a box safety. And I know you got a chance to ask him about that. He feels more than comfortable doing that. And if he can do that, man, then that's a valuable player in your defense that you can put in multiple different roles and use as a weapon.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like we know, the Colts are going to draft people from the Senior Bowl. They do it every year. They were heavily represented there this year, so it's going to keep happening. Hopefully, the guys we just talked about, you'll learn a little bit more about when they're inevitably picked by the Colts. But yeah, Shaad, thanks for hopping on, man. It was great to see you this week. And I think we, considering we have gone over 10 minutes over the normal time slot, I think we poured out the notebooks pretty well.
Yeah, man. And I know you'll have more printed up on the website on Huddle Huddle. But yeah, man, I want to talk about a lot of these guys because the chatter we had throughout the week. We was impressed with so many different players, and the Colts do it every year. The Colts grab multiple of these guys every year, so we kind of wanted to get a jump on it.
Yep, absolutely. So, guys, thank you again for joining. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Locked On was another group that was very, very heavily represented here. So if you can't get enough Senior Bowl coverage, just check out everything Locked On has to offer right now because we were thick down here for sure. If you don't already, follow at Locked On Colts. Follow Shaad. His handle is right there. Follow at Jake Arthur NFL and at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. Also subscribe on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also love your ratings and reviews. And with that, Zach and I will see you guys after the game.